Moonbreaker launched its first major update since launching in early access over a month ago, so this can give us an idea of what the devs are willing to change, or what they can change and how fast, and most importantly, how they're taking and implementing feedback. Obviously, we can't expect every single problem to be fixed in one update, but it does give us a ballpark, and if this is what they're willing to do a mere 1 month after launch, this is going to be an awesome early access period. So they made a lot of changes, but the big one, they completely removed loot boxes. They completely changed their business model, which is not something you hear a game doing very often. Normally they need like a Battlefront 2 level of controversy before doing that. But Moonbreaker did it in a mere 1 month after launching into early access, and after fans voiced their opinion. They'll be removing all the currencies in the game, including loot boxes, blanks, merits, and pulsars, and in-game store will be shut down during the early access period, and any purchase of pulsars you made will be refunded through Steam. Instead, you'll have one currency to rule them all called Sparks. Since there's no loot boxes in the game, Sparks will be used to upgrade the rarity of your units, which is still purely cosmetic, and you will now have access to all the units in the game from the beginning, including upcoming units, for free. If you purchase the Founders Pass, you'll get new skins for Zax and Slopper instead. Any blanks you had will be converted into Sparks, and they say they plan on expanding Sparks in the rarity system in the future, and they'll be making the Season Pass faster to progress through. This means everyone will now be on an even playing field from the beginning, and you'll never have to worry about having to pull the lever for that one meta unit. This also puts it much more in line with other live service games that you're probably used to, which give you just access to any gameplay changing stuff for the price of admission, and make their money from cosmetics. And with the progression changes, it feels far more rewarding, and the Battle Pass actually feels possible to complete now. Loot boxes have been extremely controversial since their inception, and while Moonbreaker probably got the closest to doing them right, it did put the game in kind of a weird spot. I get that they want this game to have a long tail, and I have no problem with a game monetizing themselves to support themselves long term, but Moonbreaker might be the perfect example of just why loot boxes just don't work. The point of loot boxes is to keep the player rolling and spending money each roll to get the thing they want. It's exploitative and preys on those with gambling addictions, and since it's a model that relies on a very small group of people referred to as whales in the industry spending a fuck ton of money, even if the majority of the player base never partakes in it, it just doesn't matter because the companies are still making money hand over fist. Moonbreaker was super generous with its drops, and you can find plenty of stories of players earning literally everything in the game within a few hours of play. I myself earned everything in just a few hours with less than 20 boxes opened, all of which I earned through gameplay. And that was great. Kudos to the devs for making a loot box system that actually felt good. But if everyone got everything for free, I can't imagine they were making much money off of it. Like, even whales wouldn't spend much if they owned literally everything in the game. And the system just gave players this feeling of unease, this fear that maybe one day they will flip the switch and make it super exploitative. So we all felt like we had to just be on guard just to make sure this doesn't happen. So this change is only good. It makes the game more fair, it makes it so that it doesn't feel exploitative, and most importantly, it makes it more fun. And now that we have every unit from the get-go, painters can more or less focus just on painting and not feel as much pressure to do PvP and just play the game at their pace in the way they want. The Season Pass is now much better in literally every way. For one, it's much faster to progress through. The amount of XP you get per match still remains the same, but the amount you need to level up is much smaller. At level 25, you now only need 700 XP to level up, so about 3-ish games, whereas before you needed over 1,000 at level 10 just to level up. And it works retroactively too, so if you've been playing, you'll see your level shoot up after the update. I went up 10 levels, and they added a bunch of new stuff to replace the blanks and loot boxes that were in the past as well. For example, you can now get new metallic paint at level 5, whereas before you had to wait till level 47 if you wanted any metallic paint. There's a ton of new paints and other stuff in the Season Pass that look really good, and you can now earn the new currency Sparks as well. So this will now give us an idea of just how easy it will be to upgrade our units to Legendary, and it seems pretty good. It takes 500 Sparks to upgrade a unit to Legendary, and you get 500 Sparks at just level 3, and you can get a total of 3,000 Sparks if you complete the pass, so that's very good. That's 6 legendaries just from doing the Season Pass. And a lot of the paints they added look great as well, including I think glowing ones at level 49 that I haven't gotten yet, but they sound cool and I do really want them, to be honest. So now I feel actually excited to progress through the Season Pass because there's a lot of stuff along the way that look interesting to me, rather than before where I was kind of just trying to grind through the pass just because I wanted that one set of metallic paints all the way at the end. But there was also a lot of balance changes they made to the game as well, and the big one is you no longer have to draw units as if they were cards that you're adding to your hand. You now just have access to all of your units out of the gate, and you can deploy them in whatever order you want so long as you have the Cinder to spend, pulling the game much further away from the card game inspirations and much more towards the strategy tabletop inspirations of the game. And I like it, it's just opened up more options for strategy. Might make it a little faster too, as people won't feel the need to stall until they get that one unit they need, and you still have a bit of the deck building feel to it. They also reworked Astra quite a bit, which I'm sure a lot of people will be happy about. She was just a little bit overpowered. Her passive no longer adds a unit to your hand on kill because you now have access to everyone at the start. It now resets her movement instead, which will make her feel a little more like a hit and run type character. You can no longer just reduce unit Cinder cost. Her 1 Cinder ability is now called Grow Cinder and will drop an orb that gives you 1 Cinder when you pick it up. The longer it's on the map, the more Cinder it gives, so if it survives 2 turns, you get 2 Cinder and so on. So that's still really powerful, but you run the risk of other captains and crew picking it up, and enemies can also destroy it, wasting that 1 Cinder you spent to use it. And finally, her Into the Breach now requires her base to be touching another in order to work. So Astra's still strong, but she seems much more balanced now. Gone are the days of Astra mains deploying units for next to nothing 2 turns in. I guess Astra mains will now have to actually learn how to play the game. So if anyone has a guide on how to play the game, I'd appreciate that, thanks. There's a whole host of other smaller balance changes too, like your crew can only have 8 units now plus your captain, down from 10. Oh, and the game automatically removed the last 2 units you added to your crew, so you might want to double check your crew before jumping into a match. And crits got their max damage reduced from 3 down to 2. Hell yeah, I have a feeling crits will still be controversial among fans, but at least we got something. A bunch of ship assists also got reworked, like Orbital Strike will do damage on the next turn, not right away, giving a chance for players to actually move out of the way. Cinder Infusion now gives 1 Cinder every turn for 3 turns, and no longer heals. Plink only works on units whose health have changed that turn, so they either took damage or I guess got heals from something else. Stowaway swaps out an undeployed unit for a more expensive one, and Corrosive Particles has had its max radius reduced. Some units also got changed too. Broken Vengeance had their damage drop from 2 to 3, but their health got buffed up to 9. Switchback's Rapid Fire only lasts 1 turn now, but their movement will stay reduced for 2 turns once they use it. Torian also got their damage reduced down to 2. Peacemaker Balam now costs less. Titonia got a range increase, god she needed that. Oh, and Vortex Beam also got its range reduced. So basically there's just more options for counterplays now and less guaranteed damage. Now you have to plan ahead more and try to predict your opponent's next move, and you can't just spam like Plink for easy heals or damage, or just half a couple of your units' health with Orbital Strike every 4 turns. I have seen some people worry that all these changes, specifically the removal of drawing units, will make low cost builds a little too strong, and look, I'm not the multiplayer guy, I'll admit, but if this game is healthy and being updated regularly and we're regularly getting new units, that meta will change like all the time. It's a delicate tightrope to walk, sure. They want the game to be fast, but if that speed comes at the cost of different strategies, that could harm the game, but the meta's gonna change an awful lot, not just in early access. If the game's successful, it'll change a lot afterwards too, just as they add stuff. And they've shown us with this update that they're willing to make major changes, and fast too, so let's just play the game a little bit, test it out, see what these changes do, and then go from there. So they made a ton of changes in this update. They didn't touch the painting much, aside from you probably have more paints now, and that's fine, the painting is still the best part of the game. And they didn't touch cargo run much. They did change the boxes that drop so that each type has a new unique look, so you can tell the difference between one that gives you new units versus one that gives you items and stuff like that. That's very appreciated, and they do look cool. And as I've said, I'm not much of a multiplayer guy. I mostly play cargo run, and that's just what I care the most about. And I gotta say, cargo run still needs a little bit of balancing. It's not that cargo run is too difficult, it's just that it feels kinda cheap sometimes. It doesn't feel good when an AI can dish out half of my captain's health bar in a single attack, and it spawns with rapid fire allowing them to attack twice, and it spawns with a plus 30% chance to crit, so they can just one-shot me or one of my other units. It means I have to either just bum rush them and hope they don't kill one of my best units, or stay as far away as possible and just take pot shots until they're dead. Because leaving a single unit out of cover means the AI could just get lucky on a 40% chance to hit and just destroy one of my best units, or even my captain. Neither of those strategies are particularly fun, to be honest, and they don't remove the cheap feeling when you do lose, and because it's a roguelite, there's no guarantee you're outfitted for either of those strategies. And the point of roguelites is that you're supposed to have this huge breadth of builds you can make, but right now it feels like all I'm doing is just giving everything to my captain and ignoring all of my other units because they could just go bye-bye in one shot and be gone for the rest of the run. Some of the captains you fight just feel too powerful, like one guy can just continuously buff their damage until they have 12 plus damage per attack and there's no cooldown, there doesn't seem to be a limit, they can do it every turn and it stacks. Yeah, they have minus 40% accuracy, but who cares when they can dish out half of your health bar in a single attack, and they can spawn with a 30% chance to crit, and they can attack twice in a single turn. Or the guy that can take control of one of your units so long as they have just a single point of damage. You can just do that. Again, there doesn't seem to be a cooldown or a limit on the number of units you can control, and he has them until the end of the match. So either you have to just avoid your own unit and the AI gets a free unit, or you have to destroy your own unit. Like, there's no counter to it, there's no way around it or to stop it. Thank God these captains are only in cargo run and will only ever be used by AI, because they're probably way too overpowered to ever put in the hands of players. You can beat them, don't get me wrong, I've won plenty of cargo runs, but it just feels cheap when I lose a unit or my captain because I got stun locked and had no way to get them to safety, or the AI dished out 15 points of damage in a single attack. It feels like I'm not losing because I got outplayed or careless. It feels like I've lost because the AI just has some cheap bullshit overpowered skill they can just spam and you have no counter to it. It's difficult, sure, and a good roguelike should be difficult, but it's a cheap kind of difficulty. A lot of this update was about adding more counterplays to the game, but it's mostly focused on multiplayer side of things. They need to do the same for Cargo Run. So I do have some ideas for fixes, so let's get in our armchair and start developing. I don't expect the developers to make any of these changes, and you shouldn't either. This is more just to get the idea out there. The simplest fix, I think, would be to just put cooldowns on some of these abilities, because even the AI knows there's no reason to not spam a guaranteed 4 damage AoE attack. One of the captains can do that, by the way. A lot of these things wouldn't be a problem if the AI was limited to only doing them every like 3 or 4 turns or something. Or what if they added more in-depth mechanics for the captains and make them feel more like boss fights? For example, the captain that can just continuously buff their damage. What if there were like energy pylons or something scattered around the map, and every time he buffed his damage, one of those pylons became active, and if you destroyed it, that could lower their damage back down to normal. This would give an interesting choice to the player to either spend a valuable turn or two destroying these pylons, permanently lowering the captain's damage, but potentially exposing themselves to a now buffed up captain and his team, or do we ignore it and just try and kill him before he can get a shot off? It would also allow for a more defensive playstyle if that's what the player prefers. Or the captain that can immobilize you with just their basic ranged attack. Maybe we can spend Cinder to break the immobile, or have another unit break the mobile at the cost of their attack turn, or the unit that is immobilized can use their attack to break it. This again would give the player the option to either spend valuable Cinder to potentially save a unit, but at the cost of a valuable attack or summoning a new unit. And that captain that can brainwash units, maybe I can have the option to move one of my units up to a brainwashed one and just slap him out of it for 1 damage or something, but I regain control of the unit. There's a lot more captains in Cargo Run that I feel like need a little bit of balancing, like the guy that has the guaranteed 4 damage range attack, but those are just some ideas to get the conversation rolling. Cargo Run already has captains and abilities we'll never see in PvP side of things, so why not make them more involved enemies that require unique methods to deal with them? They don't have to make sense or balance them from a PvP perspective because they're already such different modes and experiences, so it'd be cool to see them lean into that a little more. Another idea could be to let us pick or have some sort of control over who we fight. Most roguelites have some sort of map navigation, and while this is far from an action game, games like Slay the Spire allow you to choose where you go after a fight. We may not know exactly what we'll see when we get there, but we do know it'll be like a store or a fight or healing or something like that, so maybe Cargo Run can add in a similar type of thing. Maybe we get 2 options after a fight and it tells us what captain we'll be fighting so we can pick which one we prefer and avoid the ones that we don't like fighting. It'd also be nice if they added some sort of shop where we can buy items for that run so we have a little more control over our build instead of just relying entirely on RNG, because that's another common thing in roguelites. Or maybe they can give us a healing room or something, I don't know. So again, the player is given these interesting choices. Do we go for the fight, which could get us far more items and maybe some kind of currency to spend on healing or items later on, or do we go for that shop right now that will definitely have items, but less than what we would get from a fight, and maybe that path leads to a fight against a particular hard captain or something. And it would provide this feeling of going on more of an adventure where we could craft stories ourselves and such, instead of this disparate feeling random fights that Cargo Run is now. Like, it's kind of weird that Cargo Run just boots you all the way to the main menu after every fight, right? It should at least ask you if you want to keep playing, but if it instead put you on a map where you can choose to, do you want to fight or a shop, or do you need healing, that'd be fun. Maybe the captains they have now could be treated more like boss fights where the map narrows and you have to fight them to move on, with smaller fights leading up to them or something. That would all be a lot of work, to say the least. I understand that. They would definitely need to make a lot more Cargo Run only captains. I don't expect them to make any changes anytime soon, or at all to be honest, but the game's early access. There's going to be a lot of changes to the game before 1.0, so I don't expect anything major anytime soon. But they have shown they're willing to make major changes to their game and make them fast, as they've proven with both the Cargo Run contracts and a complete gutting of their business model. These suggestions are more things I'd like to see but don't expect, and something to get the conversation rolling, because I really love Cargo Run. It's my favorite mode in the game aside from the painting. I think it has a ton of potential, but it is early access, so there's still plenty of room for improvement. This update is very impressive, not only in the breadth of things they changed, but that they were willing to make such major changes. I thought we would have to make much more noise before they changed something like the monetization, but they did, and now it feels very consumer friendly. They're obviously listening to fans and taking feedback to heart. If this is the standard they're setting for early access, then by the end of it, we're going to come out of it with an amazing game. It would also be amazing if you liked and subscribed. If you made it out of this, thank you and have a good one.